Good afternoon. Thank you for those that are in attendance here in person or for via online. We'll go ahead and call to order the November 8th meeting of the Cobb County Board of Elections. The first item on the agenda is public comment. My understanding is we have a number of individuals that are joining us virtually, as well as those that are here in person. We will take those that are joining us virtually first. Alyssa Gold-Klang. She did indicate she might be in person, but is she on the line?
She's not.
No, she's not. Okay.
She's on her way.
She's on her way? Okay. Okay, excellent. Thank you for that update. I believe next to participate virtually is Miss Sally Grubbs. Is she on the line?
Yes.
Okay. Miss Grubbs, can you hear us?
I can hear you and I can see you.
Excellent. 2 for 2. Go right ahead.
Dear board members and Ms. Evler, I would first like to thank you for your service to the citizens of Cobb County. It is at times a thankless job, I'm sure, and I personally do appreciate the time and effort you put into what you do. The reason for my speaking today is to oppose the use of electronic equipment used in our elections in Georgia. Municipalities specifically have the right to choose. I am urging you, the guardians of the elections in Cobb, to stand for hand-marked paper ballots. There are many reasons for this, not the least of which is to have an easily auditable process. You see, when I walked in to vote on Tuesday, November the 2nd, as I came in the door, the first thing I saw to my right when I walked in, prior to even obtaining my ballot card, was a big illuminated BMD screen. At this time, if someone is voting and I am within view of that screen, which is their ballot, I can be charged with a felony according to Senate Bill 202, Section 21-413 of observing someone casting their ballot. Under the provisions under SB 202, if someone decides to allege that I saw someone's touch screen, I can be charged with a felony. If that doesn't scream voter suppression, I don't know what does. For the first time in my voting life, I had second thoughts about casting my ballot on November the 2nd. This must stop, and citizens must not risk their freedom for simply casting a ballot. Additionally, this violates the guarantee that our ballots are secret. With this equipment, our ballots are secret no more. There's also the factor that the vote is read from the QR code that is unverifiable by the voter. Next, as you know, across the state of Georgia, technicians have been hired that have conflicts of interest due to their affiliation with the producer of the voting equipment. Because the process of voting is entrusted to we the people need to control how the elections can be audited and conducted, not some multinational entity that is full of conflicts of interest. If the election process with BMDs, poll pads, printers, and scanners are so complex that experts have to be hired to conduct elections, they are too complicated, and we must return to hand-marked paper ballots. The greatest distance between a voter and his vote should be a pen at the end of his hand, not an electronic device. This must stop now, and Cobb County and its municipalities must lead the way. This is a nonpartisan issue, or shall I say it is a multi-partisan issue. Cobb County can lead the way in the state by making the simple, cost-effective change. This is how to restore confidence in our elections. Without hand-marked paper ballots, the public will not have confidence restored. One citizen, one vote, that's it. Let's prove it can happen. Now, do I hear a motion to conduct all future elections on hand-marked paper ballots? Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Grubbs. Next up is Lisa Campbell, and I do want to remind everyone that you have 5 minutes to make your public comment. That is no reflection upon you, Ms. Grubbs. You were well within your 5-minute time frame. I just did not make that announcement at the outset of public comment. Ms. Campbell?
Good afternoon. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Wonderful. I can hear you and see you as well. Good afternoon, Cobb County Director of Elections and Registration, the board, elections chairwoman, and board members. My name is Lisa Campbell. I have joined you on several occasions as a resident, a homeowner, a business owner, a taxpayer, and an active voter here in Cobb. And last week, I also served as an official poll watcher during our municipal elections in the KE 5A precinct. And today, I wanted to share, and I'm pleased to share, my observations of a well-run elections process. Thank you. I did not witness long lines or wait times in this precinct. This poll had a sufficient number of poll workers. The voting machines and process was run with efficiency and competency. I did not witness any voter intimidation. The poll opened and closed on time, and all of the poll workers wore masks or shields and implemented proper COVID mitigation, and safety and security policies were followed. The team was led by a wonderful and experienced poll manager and was especially welcoming, helpful, and attentive to the highest level of quality. So thank you. And this precinct is located within my community. It's actually in a neighborhood clubhouse, and I can hardly think of a more welcoming spot to host safe voting. Plenty of options for transportation and parking, ramps, fairly easy entry for folks who have trouble walking or using mobility devices. And after last month's discussion about voting locations and places that may be intimidating to voters, it was just a real poignant reminder to me about the critical and ongoing importance of ensuring ease of access for all voters in our county. And it affirmed my belief that it's our duty as responsible citizens eager to continue evolving into a more inclusive community, dedicated to serving all, that we continue to actively apply this insight as a critical element of our poll location vetting and decision-making process. To continue this positive momentum forward, I would also again today like to stress the ongoing need to protect the mail-in ballot options. And I continue to advocate for greater expansion, not a reduction, of drop boxes that will allow more people to safely cast their ballots in all kinds of situations and environments. And finally, I would like to voice my opposition to the new recent state rule that seeks to prohibit email or digital submission of absentee ballot requests, and I think puts another unnecessary barrier in place to those who don't have things like printers easily accessible to them in their homes or offices. And I guess today I'm just bearing witness to the hopeful truth that we can be the county that listens to each other. We can be the county that comes together. We are a county that is taking action to eliminate barriers, hopefully ease fears, welcome all participants to participate in our shared democracy with innovation, with technology. I'm an advocate, with the right safety and precautions. And I saw all of those things in place. So thank you for your ongoing opportunity to share this with you, to consider all these serious matters. Thanks for your ongoing public service to each and every one of you. And let's continue working together to protect our fair, our equitable, and transparent voting for all of us in Cobb County. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Campbell. I do believe, Ms. Goldklang, you're here. What I plan to do is just place you, since you're here physically in person, I'll just place you on the in-person list.
Thank you. I wasn't sure if I'd be able to make it, so I signed up for virtual. I didn't even cause complications.
Oh, no complication, and your friend there cleared it up if there was. Good deal. Next up is an Eileen Nakamura. Hopefully I pronounced that correctly.
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you fine, Ms. Nakamura. You have 5 minutes beginning at 3:09. Go ahead.
Great, thank you. Good afternoon. I'm Eileen Nakamura, a member of the Coalition for Good Governance. I thank you all for your service and the opportunity to speak today, and hope you've had a chance to read the email I sent you earlier in favor of using hand-marked paper ballots for the November 30th runoff, followed by a robust audit. While I'm a Fulton County voter, I have spent numerous hours poll watching and observing everything from LNA testing to tabulation in Cobb. In fact, 2 years ago, I spent many hours in different Cobb polling places observing the only pilot program in Georgia using hand-marked paper ballots. And we all know that Director Evler was extremely successful in conducting those municipal elections with little or no issues. Now that I have watched 2 years worth of elections using the Dominion BMDs after that successful hand-marked paper ballot election, there are 3 stark differences that stand out in my mind. 1, the BMDs caused all manner of technical problems at every election. 2, Using hand-marked paper ballots makes voting much faster for voters because voters don't have to spend time logging into a machine, reviewing choices, printing them, and then reviewing them again on the printout before scanning them. Third, and most importantly, there is no violation of our right to a secret ballot when voters vote using hand-marked paper ballots. Every time I've walked into a polling place in the last 2 years, either as a voter or a poll watcher, there have been touch screens that I have to shield my eyes from because I can see how other voters vote, and others can see how I vote. Quite simply, the upright, oversized, Jumbotron-type touchscreens we currently use for voting have a fatal design flaw, which violates the Georgia Constitution, which gives us the right to absolute ballot secrecy. And it is important to note that the responsibility for following voting laws falls on each county's Board of Elections, you, and not the Secretary of State's office. I encourage you to be the first BOE to follow the law and allow Cobb voters to vote a secure ballot with absolute ballot secrecy. Thank you.
And thank you, Ms. Nakamura. Next up, we'll move to those individuals that are here with us in person. Shidam Delano.
Thank you. That was right.
Excellent, thank you. 2 for 2.
Okay, I think y'all can hear me, right? So my name is Cheatham Delano. I'm a Cobb County voter, and I'm here today along with colleagues with different political affiliations to advocate for a more secure, less complex, less costly, and more time-efficient voting system. Like we've heard from several others, I'm advocating for hand-marked paper ballots. I have a computer science degree from Georgia Tech. I worked in information technology for 34 years in healthcare, education, and other industries. If you're wondering why someone in technology would advocate moving away from technology to hand-marked paper ballots, which some may consider archaic, let me explain. It's because we know what technology is capable of, and we know not to trust it without verifying the results. Also, when a technology vulnerability is exploited, the impact is often at a large scale and is nearly impossible to audit. Because of this realization, a huge number of jurisdictions across the nation have gone to hand-marked paper ballots after trying electronic voting for about a decade, starting in 2003. They recognized that it was not secure and provided They recognized that it was not secure and provided no trustworthy audit trail. So everything old is new again. Technologists know that all technology systems can be hacked and data can be manipulated without leaving a trace. Identity theft is a great example. It's so commonplace now, whole new industries have developed around protecting and recovering personal identities. The new identity theft protection services alone is a $3.2 billion market in the U.S. There are many experts who've been studying, researching, and analyzing for many years a variety of electronic voting systems. They've all proven that these systems can be hacked in a variety of ways, remotely, in person, real-time, before or after elections, without leaving a trace. These systems are easier to access and hack than many of the computer systems in use by corporate America. One of these experts is someone I know and trust personally. Dr. Richard DeMillo was one of my favorite computer science professors at Georgia Tech. He's currently the interim chair of School of Cybersecurity and Privacy at Georgia Tech. He warns that putting a computer between a voter and her ballot is asking for computer mischief that cannot be detected or corrected. Unfortunately, the 2016 and 2020 elections severely impacted the people's confidence in free and fair elections. Evidence is continuing to be gathered and analyzed that our election systems are highly vulnerable to hacking and fraud and have many possible points of attack. These vulnerabilities and possible exploitations are going to get significantly worse with every election unless we take action now. Recognizing the magnitude of the issue at hand, we're here to propose a simple first step that is small in scale to test eliminating one major security vulnerability, the BMDs. We propose using hand-marked paper ballots in the November 30th runoff for Marietta City Council Ward 5, which received 810 votes on November 2nd. It's my understanding that hand-marked paper ballots are currently in place to be used as a backup during emergency situations. Accordingly, this approach is a familiar process to the county election staff with the needed materials and tools readily available. Another important benefit to using hand-marked paper ballots is to bring Cobb County back in compliance with the ballot secrecy law, which has been mentioned a couple of times. A common problem experienced at polling locations is a lack of privacy when casting your vote. Given the configuration of the BMDs themselves, as explained previously, the location of power sources, and the shape and size of the facilities, many of the BMDs are positioned in a way that allows poll workers and other voters to easily view ballots as they're being cast. Replacing BMDs with hand-marked paper ballots would go a long way in demonstrating to the people of Cobb County that the board is serious about election integrity and is willing to take action on their own to earn the confidence of Cobb County voters. To further demonstrate the integrity of the election, we advocate that the board conduct a hand recount audit of the ballot scanned and visual confirmation that the votes were recorded as cast on paper ballots. With these two actions, we will have eliminated all vulnerabilities associated with BMDs, and we will have verified that the scanners were not compromised and votes were tabulated as intended by the voter. The lessons learned from this small and simple test can then be reviewed and considered for future elections. In addition to improving security, this approach is expected to be less complex for voters and election staff, less costly, and require less staff time, which could all be evaluated with this test. I appreciate the opportunity to speak, and thank you for your service to Cobb County. Thanks.
Thank you. Next up, Mr. Paul Desbière.
Hi, Paul Diber, a poll worker, and I'm a power plant engineer. So I have 3 observations from being a poll worker last Tuesday. First off, I was stationed between the BMDs and the printer and the scanner. I had trouble not seeing what people were voting for. Just plain old had trouble not seeing. I had to look away quite a bit to make sure I didn't see what their vote was. I asked them what their vote was, or not what their vote was, but to make sure their vote was correctly listed on the piece of paper before they scanned it. And they all said yes, it was correctly listed. That was good. But I did worry that the barcode was what the scanner was recognizing and not the words of what they had voted for. So if it was hacked, we would never have known if it was counted correctly. And the third observation is that all that heavy BMD equipment and the scanner and these great big panels was difficult to move around. I don't know how they got it there. Probably they bring it in trucks. But it seems like a lot of unnecessary complexity. And of course, the equipment is prone to failure during the voting. Simple paper ballots is all you really need, and it would seem a lot easier. And that's all.
Thank you, Mr. Diber. Ms. Pamela Reardon.
Hi, good afternoon. Pamela Reardon. I'm a voter and in East Cobb and in Cobb County. I've done a lot of poll watching. I've never been employed by the county to do the poll working. All the time that I've spent doing it, I think I should, so I could be making some money at it. But I'm here today on a number of issues. I think I ran into most of you on Tuesday when I came out of the sequestered room to watch in the back room, to watch the scanner counts and tabulations for the advanced in-person voting. I was coming out, y'all were going back in. I ran into, I ran into a member out in the field when I was doing exit polling, because at the last meeting, it seemed apparent that nobody had spoken to the people who actually live in Cooper 01. So I took it upon myself, and I can give you a copy of what I had asked, Ms. Chair. And so I went between 10 o'clock and 11 o'clock, and I spoke to 20 different people who came out after voting in the parking lot. I know that the concerns that were raised in that last meeting you indicated that you tabled it again to investigate this. So I didn't see anyone else there doing any exit polling to actually talk to the voters. So out of 20 people who came between 10 and 11, there was only one person who objected to the move to the police academy. And that reason was because when you come out of the parking lot, there's only one light, and she would have to turn left onto east-west connector. And she thought that if there was a lot of people voting that day, that would be something where she would have to sit in line trying to get out. So that was her only concern. None of the other concerns surfaced. Everyone said that they would be fine, except that one lady, she wanted to stay at the school. Some of the people said, well, I just live across the street, I live around the corner, I would like to just vote here, but I will vote there because it's a new facility, and I've been over there. That's what they say. They've had community events over there, so they're all quite happy. And by the way, there was a police car sitting they had to walk around to go up to the building door. I mean, right there. And I spoke to her. She's a very nice lady. And that was her school that she polices. So she was sitting right in the way. So pretty much at every poll, there's some sort of police or sheriff that's apparently there during the voting times. And of course, it's only for day of. It's not for advanced voting. So I don't think there should be an issue that way. So I just wanted to cover that. Early days of voting coming up. I can't see that we're going to use 3 weeks of early days of voting. I think that would be overkill and a needless amount of expense because there was only 800 people who voted in this ward on day of. So I want you to consider that and maybe cut it down to 1 week of early voting. I'm in favor of, third thing, I'm in favor of paper hand-marked ballots instead of the BMDs, but only if we have and can assure that we have total security around chain of custody of ballots to and from, like we do with the scanners, and we have people sign in, sign out. All the points that have been mentioned, the ballots, when you walk in, I mean, my poll watching, there's no way you can avoid seeing what somebody is voting or who they're voting for. Even with my poor eyesight, I could see because they're so large. So that's our number one thing is we need secrecy of the ballot, okay? So the other things about hacking, I'm not so sure on because I'm not a scientist. I haven't seen it, I haven't done it. So thank goodness I haven't done it because you can't arrest me. But I don't know who has done it. So, I mean, that's up in the air. But we do need secrecy in our ballots. And the hand-marked are better secrecy than watching that big screen. I am also for a audit for this runoff where we can verify that we can count the actual names that are on those ballots if we have to do the machines so that we can see the names, we can count them, hand count them, and compare them to the QR code because we can't count QR codes. So I do, if you want a copy of my exit. Oh, you do? Oh, time. Oh, okay. I thought you were saying yes.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I didn't want to interrupt you.
All right. Oh, I'm done.
I give the job to Greg.
No, I'm done. I'm done. I'm
Okay.
done. Thank you for your time and thank you for your service. Did you want a copy of it so you can hand it to her?
You're more than welcome to leave it there. We'll grab it. Or you're more than welcome to give it to me. I'll take a look.
Oh, okay. All right. I just thought that you would like to see. I mean, and he was there.
Yes, I have spoken with Steve. He did share with us that he ran into.
Yeah. So he actually witnessed this things I said.
Yep.
All right. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Yeah. No problem. Anytime.
Miss Betty Baran or Baran? Baran.
Members of the Cobb County Board of Elections, my name is Betty Buran, and I'm a 48-year resident of Cobb County. I've seen a lot of different ways to vote. I'm here this afternoon to advocate for the use of hand-marked paper ballots in the upcoming municipal election. As voting equipment has gotten more high-tech, voter confidence in fair and transparent elections has declined. This is a nonpartisan issue. Every responsible voter, Democrat, Republican, or independent, should want our elections to be fair, transparent, and accurate. As a poll watcher, I have witnessed concerns with the current voting system as it relates to voter security, complexity of the equipment, and technical issues. Under voter security, I've noticed that ballot marking devices, whether they're quad, duplex, or standalone units, that cannot be arranged in a way that guarantees privacy. People have to walk past voters in the process of casting their votes to get to a vacant BMD. Also, if standing alone BMDs are facing each other with a walkway between them, a voter casting a vote has a false sense of privacy because anyone walking by has full visibility of that ballot. And as noticed on this Tuesday's election, voter certification was done on Tuesday plus poll pads. I think that's a duplication of effort and extended voting time. As far as complexity of BMDs and the non-intuitive voting process, during the House District 34 special election, there was a one-issue ballot. It took most people 5 to 10 minutes to figure out the voting process, where to insert their voter card, walking away from the BMDs without their ballot in hand, or trying to exit the poll with ballot in hand, thinking that the BMD had registered their ballot. And some of the people were unsure as to how to feed the ballot into the scanner. As far as technical issues are concerned, on a couple of different occasions, 2 ballots were printed out for the same voter. BMDs out of service reduces traffic through the polls, and there is a dependence on technical help, which adds expense, whether it's built into the system for the cost or not. And it also creates time delays. This past Tuesday also, I saw no priority of ballots at closing. Machines were broken down and packed up first, while 502 ballots sat in an open ballot box for 2 hours. Because local boards have full authority to use hand-marked paper ballots in municipal elections, I urge this board to do so. This will reduce complexity, increase security, and save money. Most importantly, it will bring confidence back to our election process. Thank you for your time and your service.
Thank you, Ms. Moran. Mr. Boyd Parks.
Good afternoon. Thank you for this opportunity. I'm not as eloquent as some of the predecessors here, so I'll keep this short anyway. I don't know who to attribute this quote to, but I love it. Ignoring evidence of election fraud because the election is already over is like ignoring a murder because the victim is already dead. I like that enough that I have it on my email signature. Relative to last month's meeting, I am curious if any feedback has been received from the electors of Cooper 02. Do we have any of those electors here today? All right. I think we heard some a little earlier. Closer to home, from what I know, the recent election in the 3 Ackworth precincts went well. At least the candidates I voted for won re-election. I, like many others, believe we need to have forensic audits done in every county in Georgia, since there's evidence of irregularities in most, if not all, of those counties. We need to make money-saving and drastic changes to voting in Cobb and across the state. Per the code, I believe that the election administrator, and I may have that title wrong, has the authority to change how the voting is conducted. The ballot marking devices need to be melted down. They put an unverifiable QR code on the ballot instead of the lawful human-readable names of the selected candidates. The scanners that read the absentee ballots also need to be melted down. There's no way to know that they have not been hacked. Dominion employees are unneeded and thus need to go. This will help reduce the cost of elections. Ballots should be printed at each polling place as needed for each voter once they have been identified as a legal voter. Each polling place should have 2 or more printers. If the poll book computers are online, I do not understand why. Seems to me if a voter is not in the poll book, they can cast a provisional ballot. And finally, I suggest that, as some other counties do and have other countries do, and have the voter dip their index finger in India ink to indicate that they have voted and prevent them from voting more than once. Thank you for your time and service.
Thank you, Mr. Parks. Ms. Alyssa Goldklang.
We have one more speaker as well, Christine Rosman.
Christine Rosman, okay. No, yeah, it's all you.
Hi, how are you? I'm Elisa Goldklang, and in German, Goldklang means beautiful sound. Everybody always wonders how to pronounce my name. I want to first thank you all. The year that you all have had is unbelievable. And I want to thank you for your service and thank you for standing up for Cobb voters and doing a job that in the past year has been extraordinarily difficult. So I really admire you for that. I'm a Cobb County voter. I live in East Cobb, and I've also been a certified poll watcher many, many times. I am here today to ask you to have the November runoffs be hand-marked paper ballots. I think a lot of people are asking for the same thing, as well as being followed by an audit. And here's why. First of all, as a poll watcher and as a voter, the VMDs have screens that are literally this big. You can't help but see what people are voting, and that is against Georgia's law. You are guaranteed an absolute private vote. Privacy is key, because we all know, and especially in this partisan time, that even within families and within communities and with jobs, people can be pressured to vote one way or the other. And if somebody's in that room and they're watching and they want to see, oh, did Joe Schmo vote the way he should or the way we're pressuring him to, they can do it with BMDs. And hand-marked paper ballots completely eliminates that. Now, I'm also asking for hand-marked paper ballots with the scanners. Hand-marked statistics show that counting by hand does not work, but counting by the scanners gives us both an electronic record, you have the copy, plus the hard copy plus the electronic record. So you have 2 checks. Now, the other reason I'm asking for it too is because we have never done a true audit in Georgia in the last 20 years. And you know why? Because we don't have the voters' intentions. We don't know what they are. And you know why we don't? It's because, well, now with the BMDs, it translates your votes into a QR code. And the scanner only reads the QR code, nothing else. So even though we have copies of those ballots, there's just, and Dominion has not given the state ability to decode the code. So, and we also know, as many people have said, anything can be hacked these days. And that old myth of it's not connected to the internet it's a myth, it's a fallacy. There are many stages upon which things can be hacked and malware can be installed, as Professor DeMillo, as Professor Wu has suggested. It's easy, different nodes, through county emails, when there's getting sent updates. I mean, you all use your computers when you're getting these updates and you're putting things in, key cards. It's so simple for people who know what they're doing, even from across the ocean. I mean, let's not face it. Cobb County was mentioned in the Mueller report. And let's not forget, too, that Judge Totenberg, in her opinion, in August 2019, really chided the current administration, that administration and current one, for their lack of understanding of cybersecurity and their lack of understanding of computer science. They thought computers were air-gapped when they weren't. It was clear at those trials they really didn't know what they were doing. And I need to have trust. I need to know that my vote, whatever my vote is, should be nonpartisan, is counted and can be audited. Audits are very important. The only way we know what a voter said is if we see it marked on the paper. QR codes, cybersecurity experts say you can actually send in malware that will print out the proper, so somebody will look and go, oh yeah, that's what I voted, but it'll change the votes within the system. And we know that the Russians and we know that bad actors are everywhere. I don't believe, and from my study, there's not been voter fraud in Georgia. I trust Georgia voters. There's been a few mistakes here and there, but Georgia's voters have not committed fraud. But what we do need to make sure is that with electronic equipment, it's safe. And finally, when I was a poll watcher, I asked one of the techs how things were connected at the polls. And he showed me on his phone. They were connected by Bluetooth. And when I got home that night and I told my kids, my son literally did a spit take. He was like, what? He's like, Mom,
That's your time.
that's the easiest thing to hack. Don't they know that?
Thank you, Ms. Goldklang. We appreciate you being here. And then finally, I believe it's Christine Rossman. Kristen Rossman.
Thank you. Christine Rosman. I'm a Cobb County, City of Marietta voter. And I actually was a poll watcher on Tuesday, and it was a very pretty smooth operation. The only thing that was quirky was that a display on 3 of the poll pads was showing canceled 4. Was it canceled 4? I think is what I was, now it was, hold on. So I think it was canceled 4. And then I asked about that. They had somebody come over, a technician come over, and then he got there and he said, yeah, it's happening pretty much everywhere. Not everywhere, but many of them. And it would anywhere be between canceled 1 or canceled 2, 3 or 4. I was just curious as to why that was happening. He said something like it depended on how many items were being voted on in that particular precinct. So I don't know if you're going to address that or not. I have to say, I wasn't even going to say this until I was listening to the other public comments, and especially Mr. Diver when he said the unnecessary complexity. And there's something, I was in sales, and they would always say KISS, keep it simple, silly, keep it simple, salespeople. And with that, and as being an observer, I was thinking, it's so black and white. You're voting for like 2 things, and it's so convoluted, and there's a lot of chance for error. Error in that it's kind of like a franchise. This precinct works this way, this precinct, it's really supposed to be pretty similar in each way. But as you know, going to any kind of franchise restaurant, it's like, wow, that was a really good Chick-fil-A, or that was a bad Arby's, or whatever, and it's like there wasn't consistency, and I think that that's because we're all human, there's not going to be consistency. But there's also not always going to be really honest people, too. And I know with the Bluetooth and Wi-Fi and the thing called the Raspberry Pi that can pick up on other Wi-Fi that wouldn't be shown on your phone's Wi-Fi, that can be really telling of what's happening, and I know that that was something used in previous elections. So I just wanted to say, I too would be a real fan of the paper hand-marked ballot. And I think that that would be a perfect time for this runoff to just try it out. Get your group of Democrats, get your group of Republicans, get your group of Georgia voters, so that it's a nice balanced group, because it is a nonpartisan issue. I did see on election night where there was a particular candidate that, I'm not going to say who, what race, whatever, but winning by almost 1,000 points at 10:30, and I'm like, all right. No Espanol. And so, and then all of a sudden the next morning, the other candidate was up by like 1,000 or something, and it's like, who did that magic trick? And so, I mean, that was just a local election, not to mention the others. So at this juncture, Americans, Cobb County, City of Marietta, we all have a distrust right now that you can feel. And I think anything that can be done to come together as a community, to respect all persons and what they want. And because I think pretty much everybody's in agreement that we have to have an integrity in our elections. And if there's questions about that, that is toxic to a community, to a country. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Russman. Again, thank you for those of you that participated in the public comment section of this afternoon's meeting. Moving on to the approval of the minutes for the October 11th meeting. Have you all board members had an opportunity to review the meeting minutes? Yes. I will entertain a motion to approve those minutes.
Move we approve the minutes.
Thank you. Mr. Bruning, is there a second? Thank you, Ms. Mossbacher. It's been moved and properly seconded to approve the meeting minutes of our October 11th meeting. If you'll mark your vote, please. Mr. Garland? Mr. Garland? To vote for the approval of the minutes? Thank you kindly, sir. All right, the meeting minutes have been approved. Moving on to the next item of the agenda, we will have a report from Ms. Janine Evler with regard to the November 2nd, 2021 election.
Good afternoon, board, chairwoman, and board members. I would like to give you just a few overview items that happened on election day, so you can kind of hear how our day was and some of the things that we've learned since the election, just to give you some more information before we go into the actual results. So wait times, we had, the first time that we were charged by the new election code to track wait times 3 times a day. So the poll workers had a new format on their poll pad recap that directed them to check wait times. Unfortunately, we had 35 out of our 145 polls that did not complete their wait times. But of the rest of them, most of them recorded between 0 and 3 minutes. Of course, this was a very small election, and we didn't expect to have lines. The longest wait time was at Bernie 01, and that was 11 minutes, recorded at 10:39. And I'll have this back to you after the election, so if you don't want to take notes, or after the meeting. This was also the first time we had returned to using paper voter certificates. And I had mentioned to you all briefly, and I think through email, that we were concerned with not having a paper backup for the poll pads. You know, we have gone to a paper backup for the voting machines, but we didn't have anything that backed up the check-in poll pad. So we decided that in addition to the fact that with the poll pad we were not getting a voter certificate back from the vendor to retain, because we are required to retain voter certificates for 2 years, we decided that it was prudent to go back to voter certificates that would be a paper backup. And that was quite successful. We didn't see any complaints, hear any complaints. All the polls followed those directions. And so we have a really good record now of the folks that have checked in for the election. Moving on, we had 3 scanners that jammed during Election Day, and they were replaced midday. Those were from Fuller's Park 01, Soap Creek 01, and Smyrna 2A. And during the downtime between the jam and the replacement, the poll workers executed the emergency bin. So poll workers cast their ballots into the emergency bin. And then when the new scanner was implemented, they, in the public realm, while people were there, they opened the emergency bin and rescanned or scanned for the first time those emergency bin ballots. We had an instance where, 2 actually, that we had to rescan at the central office the ballots from 2 polls. The first instance was at Ackworth 1B, when the new election law required us to have the numbers of ballots cast back in a report to the Secretary of State by 10 p.m. So we implemented a process where the poll workers were either texting or calling into their supervisor how many ballots were cast. Then the supervisors were texting into the office. Then we were gathering all that information. And Ackworth 1B indicated they had unscanned ballots, which would be happening if their scanner was down and they were voters were casting ballots in the emergency bin. But we knew that their scanner wasn't down. So we said, well, you can go ahead and scan those. Well, they had misinterpreted the whole thing to start with. They didn't have unscanned ballots. They had scanned ballots that were write-in diversion ballots. So those of you who know about the scanner ballot box, if it has a write-in, it goes into a diversion tray so that we can count those by hand. So they had misunderstood and called those unscanned ballots. So in essence, they had 9 ballots that they scanned twice. So by the time we discovered that, the decision was, and we consulted with the Secretary of State's office, that we had to start over, zero out that scanner, and scan all of the ballots again so we got the correct results. That was the first one that this happened to. The second one was Fuller's Park 01, which also was part of the scanners that jammed. So it was, in that case, when it jammed, the poll workers, instead of clearing the paper that jammed, they pulled from the bottom and pulled the ballot through the scanner, and it actually had not counted. So when we got all the numbers back, we do an audit of every poll that comes back, and all the ballots are counted, and we realized that was one that was off. So we zeroed that one out as well and rescanned all the ballots, and it came to the right numbers of ballots. Because we're looking at that the numbers of ballots match how many ballots there are and how many were cast and scanned. So we really haven't had that happen, but we had it happen twice this election. Also, as most of you know, we had 7 late opening polls. They were between 5 and 30 minutes late to get open. Those were Bryant 02, Dowell 01, Marietta 5B, Oregon 1, Oregon 3, Hightower 01, and Post Oak 01. Now the Bryant 02 case, that was because they had an inexperienced maintenance person that didn't know how to turn the lights on. So they were trying to set up between 6 and 7 in the dark. And so they were a little bit late getting open, but that was kind of an excusable, I guess, problem that was related to the facility. The other 6 of the 7 that opened late were really just inexperienced poll workers and their confusion over the instructions. So that is something that we're going to obviously work on to make sure that we can give them enough training and experience and good instructions to follow. We also had one poll that had a fire alarm during the middle of the day, and that required them to vacate the facility for 10 minutes. So in all, that's 8 polls that we had to get a court order to extend the time in which they would stay open at the end of the day. And so each one, according to the new law, was extended only the time that they were down or not processing voters. One of the things I wanted to mention as to related to the inexperience of poll workers, we did have 43 first-time managers, poll managers this time, and 5 second-time poll managers. So we had a big turnover from last year, and this, of course, is our first countywide election for the 2021 cycle. We had a House district is all we've really had this year. So we had a lot of new workers, and we are experiencing quite a bit of turnover at the very late part of the cycle of hiring. We had 23 poll workers that quit or were no-shows on election day. We had 35 that quit on Monday prior to election on the setup day. And we had 83 that quit in the week prior to the election. And so we do have a group of standbys that we train for these situations, because we're always going to have people that fall ill or something comes up. But we exhausted the standbys, and in many cases, polls were short workers. Okay, so let's talk about the actual results of the election. You have in your packet of information over there our election night report, which is called a report from election night. And these are the bits of information that we track each election so we can get kind of a time over time look at the election information. We track the first precincts that came back from election day, the first precinct that was uploaded, the last precinct that came in, and the last precinct that was uploaded, which you have there on your list. The first one came in at 8:10, and the last one came in at 10:44. We had several polls 4 of them actually, that left their voted ballots at the poll with their election equipment, and they were secured and sealed, but they were supposed to be bringing those back on election night. That was Clarkdale 01, Dodgen 01, Pope 01, and Simpson 01. When they bring everything back, we track what is coming back and make sure that we know what has been left. And in this case, they assured us that they were sealed and they were locked with the other equipment in the same room as the carriers and the BMDs. So our delivery teams pick them up with the carriers on the next few days for pickup. We uploaded and released results for early voting at 7:27 and the mail at 8 o'clock. And overall, the turnout came to 9.47%. We had 50,212 ballots cast out of the 530,097 that were eligible countywide. We have provisional ballot section. There were no provisional ballots in early voting. At the polls, there were 80 provisional ballots issued, and 55 of those were counted. Just another note relative to the new election law, there were 49, I think it was, out of precinct ballots that were issued, and of those, 16 were not counted. I'm sorry, 49 were counted, 16 were not counted, and that was a total of 65. So most of our provisional ballots were out of precinct ballots. The 16 that weren't counted was because there was no affidavit. As you recall, with the new election law, the voters we can't count a provisional out of precinct ballot unless it's cast between 5 p.m. and 7 p.m. and includes an affidavit from the voter saying that they can't get to their correct poll. So these 16 did not execute an affidavit for whatever reason. Either the poll worker didn't do their job or the voter just did not want to sign the affidavit. And then the last section, of course, is the absentee mail and advance voting, and those are the numbers of ballots that were cast. There is a by mail section that says cured after election day. So there were 8 ballots that, we can have the 3 days that's allowed for counting provisional ballots is also allowed for receiving an affidavit from a voter who has had a problem with their ballot. It didn't have all the right information on the oath or on their application. It didn't have the right information on it. Their driver's license didn't match or that sort of thing. So those are called cures, and the voters are allowed to sign an affidavit and send in their ID to cure that information. Okay, I did want to also talk about, sorry, I have a lot to talk about. I did want to say that when we are, working from election day to this certification meeting, we are canvassing all of the returns that come back. And so, as I said earlier, we're looking at, for instance, for absentee ballots, we're comparing the number of ballots that we've accepted into the eNet system compared to the number that have been scanned to make sure that everybody that got credit for voting that had an accepted ballot, the ballots that were scanned match. Now, minus, of course, the spoiled ballots. Sometimes we open an envelope and the ballot says spoiled, but we have accepted it because we didn't know that it was spoiled. And as you know, the ballot is separated from the oath envelope. So there's no way to know that as you open it up until it's too late to reject or spoil it on the voter's record. So we have done that kind of canvassing and looked at the numbers of ballots that were accepted for the voter records, and minus the spoiled ballots equals the number scanned. So that did match up. We also, for the polls, we're going to look at to compare the ballots that were cast, the number of ballots cast, to the number of paper ballots. So the day after the election, we have a team that goes out and counts the number of paper ballots in the ballot box that came back to make sure we know how many ballots were cast. And it's a little tedious, but in a big election, it's a lot tedious. But we want to make sure that the number cast in the scanner equals the number of paper ballots that we have. It's not an audit, but it's the beginnings of an audit. It's basically just saying, do we get all the ballots scanned that we were supposed to? And then we're looking to compare that number to the number of voter certificates and the number of people that checked into the poll pads. So we want to make sure that everybody that filled out a voter certificate, the same number is the number that got cast. Well, we have a few discrepancies, and this happens every election. But what we have on this one is 9 polls where the numbers do not balance by 1 or 2. So, for instance, at Baker 01, we have 177 people that completed a voter certificate, 177 ballots cast, so that matches. But the poll pad only has 175 names listed. So there's a discrepancy. So we are going through the 9 polls that have these kinds of 1 or 2 discrepancies, and we're required now to do a reconciliation report so that every single discrepancy is accounted for. In this case, they did complete their research right before I came here. This was the first poll they were looking at. And the 2 voters were found not to be listed on the poll pad numbered list. So we've got to do some research as to why the poll pad would not have recorded those 2 voters. They do have a voter certificate, and the ballots match. So those are the kinds of things that we are still working on, but certainly nothing that would provide a reason not to certify this election. The discrepancies at 9 polls are within 1 or 2 ballots, numbers of ballots. So again, we're going to be doing a reconciliation report. We have 30 days to complete that based on the SEB rule that monitors that. And none of the 9 ballot or polls are municipal polls, so the discrepancies are only in the SPLOST election race, which of course was a landslide. So the outcome is not going to change. Before I ask for your questions, I would also like to point you to the election summary report. This is from the tabulation server and has the actual results. With the exception of one certified write-in candidate, we'll have a separate consolidation report that you'll be signing as part of the signing. There was a certified write-in candidate, Ms. Katrina Barr, for Marietta Council, Ward 3. She received 52 votes. And so we will certify that because she was a qualified write-in. But the way that the system reports the summary report, it doesn't do write-ins because there are a lot of unqualified write-ins that, Mickey Mouse, Donald Duck. So we do that as a separate hand count. All right, so that was a lot of information. Again, I will provide you with my notes so that you have that in writing, but I would like to entertain any questions that you have, and then at the end of that, ask that you certify the election.
I have a few questions, but I don't know as to whether any of you have questions. Yes, Mr. Garland.
This doesn't have to do with the numbers as much as going out to the polls that day and talking to the poll managers. And of the 5 that I went to, 4 were telling me they were having problems for security, like we heard people saying when they walked in. And I know a lot of times when we come in to set up, the schematics that individual church or school or whatever gave us, they couldn't put it, adequately where everything was kind of open. Is there any way we can, I don't know if can we even afford for the security of, remember when we used to go into it and you pulled a curtain and you voted? What can we do? I mean, is there something that can be done
Right.
to, I looked around like at some of the bigger churches and they just had put in walls or something, and the poor poll manager had to put the machines or the people that set it up had to put them where they could. But is there a way that they have permission to go ahead and turn some of the machines around where people can't see you voting?
Yes, we give the poll managers a diagram of the facility with where to place the carriers based on the electrical outlets they are to use. But we train them or teach them that they're to manipulate the direction that the carriers face to allow for the most privacy for the voters voting. I'm not sure that everybody quite gets that yet. Again, this was our very first time using the carriers countywide. We used them in that smaller House district race. In addition, we, in our previous equipment that we had placed on those shelving units, allowed us to put a black box screen around the ballot marking device touchscreen. And that doesn't fit with the new carriers because the screen is up and there's a part of the carrier that blocks us attaching that. So we were really sad to lose that function because that privacy screen, we've never heard that last year that there was a privacy issue because they really did work. So we're still looking at what we could possibly attach to the carrier that might come out. but my understanding is that we're not allowed to have curtains like you were mentioning the old days, because the poll workers do have to have access to the face of the touchscreen to see that there isn't anything left there that's campaign materials after a voter leaves the booth. But we do want that the voter is in the booth in a private manner. So we're going to keep looking at it, but we did instruct the poll workers that they could position the carriers in such a way that, you know, the part of the carrier that has no touchscreen faces the line, and then the part that has the open doors faces the wall.
Now, did any of my counterparts receive any of this from when you went around to look at some of the polls? Just you? Did you?
I did not. I voted Teasley.
Okay, so you thought they were pretty secure in your area?
When I walked in, I did not see, but I'm also not looking for it either. So
Now you will be,
I walk in, so yeah.
Okay, well, then maybe, did any of the poll leaders, or whatever you call them, managers, did they I presume they write up everything after they have done it, some of the problems they've encountered. Was any of that in there, or?
They do send in managers' comments if they choose to, and unfortunately, I haven't had time to go through them all yet.
Okay, well, that's fine.
But we will, and it is something on our radar that we want to fix. The fact that our new carriers are causing a little bit of an issue with this, certainly we don't want there to be a privacy issue, so we're going to look for some other way to make that happen.
All right. The only other question I had was, and I don't know if I need to bring this up, some of the people were talking about the paper ballot. Are we going to talk about that, or?
I would tend to think that perhaps board member comments, I just want us to.
Okay, I'll back off.
Yeah, no, not that. I just want to put it where we can on the agenda during board member comments, so we do have the opportunity to finish this agenda item.
I just want to see, can we even do it? I think Greg would be the one we'd have to address that to. Is that legal, to have a paper ballot for the?
Yeah, we're just going to address it. Yes, we absolutely will address it.
I'm sorry.
No need for an apology, just suggesting that we address it during the board member comments, because I don't know as to whether anyone, I know I have a couple of questions very similar to yours with regard to the report that Ms. Evler has provided to us. So I don't know as to whether anyone else on the board has comments or questions for Ms. Evler with regard to her report. Okay. And just a point of clarification, I do look to see if I could see anyone's screen, but I could not. And perhaps it was just the configuration at Teasley. But no, I did not see anyone's screen as I walked to the BMD to cast my vote. Ms. Evler, yes, go ahead. Oh, of course, go ahead.
Sorry. I was just curious, in Powder Springs Ward 3, where there's only a 6-vote difference, is that something that gets a secondary look or audit, or only if requested, or how does that work?
A candidate can request a recount if the margin is 0.5% of the total votes cast. In this case, the 6 ballots is 1%. It's actually 1.1% of the total votes cast. It's a small election race. And so Ms. Farmer did come in and talk to me about that. And so I did, point out to her that the code does not allow her to request a recount.
Okay, great.
During your report, you made mention of just a few issues with respect to training and experience, and I think that's also, it kind of dovetails into the other issue with regard to retention and recruitment. So with regard to those 3 points, training, retention, and recruitment of poll workers, specifically poll managers, I guess, and obviously we're not even 1 week past the election, but just early goings, what is it that you and your team are looking at to try to remedy those concerns?
Well, we always have a big exodus after an even-numbered year, which we had, the presidential election last year. So we always see quite a bit of turnover. I think what is unusual this time, in other words, we would normally see quite a few new managers in the first countywide election. I think what is unusual is we're seeing that the area supervisors are not even getting a call. Like the person will agree to work and go to training, and we think that they are hired. We've had a communication with them, sent them a hiring letter, and then when it gets close to the election, the supervisor is calling to make confirmation with that person, and they don't answer the phone or they don't call back after a message is left, and we're left to wonder, are they going to show up or not? So that, I think, has been a new thing recently, and I'm sort of at a loss as to how to manage that. I guess, times have changed a little bit, and it's harder to get people to commit to a one-day job that's really quite lengthy and difficult. So as far as the new poll managers and the difficulty that some of them had on election day with the equipment and getting everything up and running, we have pretty detailed instructions that should guide them step by step through it. But being new to being in charge at the poll, they got flustered. And by the time we got a call from them, many times they had been trying to resolve the problem without giving us a call and asking for help. We'll train more on what to do in an emergency, what to do in a case where things don't go exactly as you plan.
Okay.
Any suggestions would be much appreciated as well.
Certainly. I think we're all going to need to put our heads together to figure out a way, especially in light of the fact that next year's election will look very different, just with regard to the number of items on the ballot. And then finally, you made mention of the 35 of the 145 locations that did not provide, consistent with SB 202, the numbers by 10 p.m. I guess, I don't want to say remediation, but what has been done as far as communication with those poll managers and processes?
So actually, they did all provide the 10 p.m. numbers, the by 10 p.m. numbers. These 35 polls did not provide their wait times.
Their wait times, got it.
And so the wait times are actually required in the even-numbered November elections. And so actually, we're quite glad that the state has said, no, we're going to do it on everyone so that they can get used to it. And so, this is something just to learn that, 35 of the polls didn't understand that was their responsibility. But that in this election, there's no harm, no foul because it wasn't required. But we do want them to understand that that's something that they need to do. And I think part of it was that they just didn't have a big line, so they didn't think about it.
Okay. And then from the perspective of those locations that perhaps didn't have as lengthy of a line, but then you have those that had lengthier lines, not again the type of lines you expect next year, are they all following the same process or the same procedure for calculating the wait times?
We did train them, not in class, but we gave them instructions in their, what we call the last-minute instructions. Ms. Mossbacher did point out to us that we didn't have that kind of methodology taught in the training class, but we did go over that in their last-minute instructions, that they're supposed to do a piece of paper to the last person in line, and when they finally get to the front of the line, you record the difference in time. But with very little line, they really didn't have time to practice that. And so a lot of them probably just estimated, to be honest.
Okay, sure. Well, I don't have any further. Yes, Steve?
I was just going to make a comment about the training. I went through all 3 training sessions 3 days in a row. And the first day was the poll worker training, second was the poll manager training. And just as a suggestion, you may want to split the poll manager training into a couple of days, a couple of sessions, just to reinforce what you taught them on the first day, because I was a lot better at putting the poll pad together on the second day than I was on the first day. And, just a little repetition is helpful, particularly for the poll managers, because those that have been there a few years, no problem. But those that are doing it for the first time, anyway, perhaps splitting the training sessions, particularly next year when the volume is going to be so big that may be a benefit.
That's an excellent suggestion. What we had contemplating doing instead is that we would have an equipment-focused class and then a policies and procedures kind of class for the managers and also some of the poll workers that will be helping with the equipment.
Anything further? Okay. Hearing nothing, is there a motion to certify the results of the November 2nd election? Thank you, Mr. Gartland. Is there a second? Thank you, Ms. Brooks. It's been moved and properly seconded to certify the election results of November 2nd, 2021 general election. If you'll please note your vote, please. It's unanimous. Thank you. Moving on to the regular business.
Okay, I didn't bring that handout, but you all should have received that in your emails.
I'm sorry, which handout are you referring to?
The handout of the schedule. Oh, I'm sorry, this was in the agenda. The board meeting minutes is in your agenda.
Okay, sure.
Thank you. Sorry about that.
No problem. Oh, I'm sorry, you're referring to the board meeting proposed dates for 2022.
Is that the item you're on?
No, you were asking about a handout, and I don't know what handout you're referring to.
Sorry.
It's all good.
Yeah. So in your agenda, tab 4 is the board meeting times, dates and times that we're proposing for 2022. And so we're asking that you make any changes or let us know if this is okay.
I know that we've previously raised this concern about the 3 p.m. time, and I don't know as to whether going into a new calendar year would provide any additional opportunity to revisit this time. Not only have us as board members presented concerns about it, but voters have come to this forum and have presented concerns about it. So are we in a position to revisit the time?
Not if we want it to be broadcast, because we need technical assistance from our IT people, RT and communications. And so...
and that presupposes that it remains on the second Monday of the month? Again, perhaps it's a matter of revisiting the time as well as the standing day.
Well, we did open up to any other day, and we also did not get any other day that we could do it. Okay. It's possible we could have, as you said, maybe a work session in between or every quarter or something like that, that we don't broadcast, but we open up to a later evening meeting, town hall kind of thing. I'm just suggesting.
Okay. I just don't want it to, I don't want us to move forward with this time if, again, it continues to present concerns. I will say I struggle personally coming from the Midtown area to get here at 3 p.m. I'm kind of at the, I'm at the whims of the folks that traverse 75. If they're moving well, then I can move well. If they're not, then I can't. So, okay, I just wanted to raise that. Anyone else have concerns? Any comments, questions about the timing? Okay, sure.
Do we have to add anything on here if there's runoffs, or we just add that later?
When there's a runoff, in fact, we'll be doing that later in this agenda, then we move the meeting to a certification Monday. So like, for instance, the board meeting for December this year is December 13th, but we're going to be needing to move it to December 6th, and that's on this agenda that we're working on today.
So should we just account for that now so that we're already on the calendar? Like, if I'm thinking about next year's election, midterm, should we just go ahead and say, so from a calendaring perspective for December of 2022, that we're going to just do that one?
We
earlier?
always do that for the general primary runoff because in my experience, we've never not had one.
Right.
But we often don't have a December or late, a general primary runoff is not as common. So we usually wait and see what happens.
But the November one, you're saying is already accommodating for that?
The November, where it says certification, that is on the required Monday to certify. So for instance, the November 8th, 22 is the election date, and the 14th is the following Monday.
Okay, so that's already accommodating
That's already in
that.
there, yeah.
And you're just saying December may have to move.
Right, so the December 12th is our regular, would be our regular board meeting, regular Monday, second Monday of the month. But if there is a runoff from the November election, we might have to change that date.
Okay.
So what are you suggesting that the event, what would be the date in the event there was a runoff from the November election, to put that and just put it in parentheses or just denote it on there that, if needed?
I guess I just feel like if I'm planning, if we're talking about planning, it seems to make the most sense to assume that there's going to be a runoff that we would need to certify on that. Like we're doing it right now and we only had a small municipal election.
Yeah, and that's what I mean. We usually just do it the meeting before, but it's certainly up to you how you want to do it.
What does everybody think about that? Just making it the first Monday or leaving it as is?
Make it a special vote.
Do you guys know which?
I like the idea of moving the December up a week just because Christmas.
Okay.
All right, Brenda has solved the problem for us.
Please.
That December 12th would be the date if we had a runoff, because the runoff would be the week prior to that. December
Oh, the
8th.
runoff would be December 6th?
6th. Mhm.
Okay, so then we don't need to change anything?
Nope, it's already good either way.
Excellent. Okay, thank you. And thank you for noting the agenda submission dates as well. Anything else? No? Okay. So I'll entertain a motion to approve the 2022 board meeting calendar. Thank you, Mr. Gartland. Is there a second? Mr. Bruning. If you'll note your vote to approve or disapprove. It's unanimous, thank you. I have you noted for the activity schedule for November 30th, 2021?
Yeah, I'm afraid we didn't make copies for today, but this was sent to you in an email. But I can just talk through what I provided to you was the election runoff kind of schedule of main events. So, for instance, we were dependent on getting the election project, which is the database of the election for the runoff. That was kind of necessary to start any of this, and we just received that this morning. So from that, we'll be printing ballots, and we'll be mailing ballots as soon as we get them all printed and packed. We have, I believe, just 6 applications for absentee ballots.
Can we put it up on the screen?
I won't be able to read from it. No, that's okay. Yeah. Can you put that on, CP? Maybe it'll come up.
Gee, you want this one?
Ooh, I think he's got it up there. He's got it up there. Okay, so again, the first thing that has to happen is we have to get the election project, and we have that, and that is our database. And from that, we'll be printing ballots as soon as we get it, which we got it this morning. As soon as we get all the ballots printed for the mail that we have to mail out, we'll be mailing the ballots out that have applied for the runoff. And right now, that's only 6, I believe, applications so far, so we should have those out probably tomorrow. And then we'll be beginning the logic and accuracy testing on the very little bit of equipment that's needed on November 10th. And our proposal, which you'll hear in the next agenda item for advanced voting, would start on the 15th if that is approved. And then the last date to issue absentee ballots, again, based on the new law, it's 11 days before the election. So the last day we can not issue, that's wrong. The last date we can accept applications for absentee ballots is November 19th. And then we'll deliver to the polls on the 23rd, all the equipment. We'll be doing the supply check with the area supervisor on the 24th, which is the Wednesday before the Thanksgiving holiday. We're going to try and get all of that done before the holiday. And do the poll pads preparation also on that day so that we can be off for the holiday. And then on Monday, the 29th, the 2 poll managers, because this is 2 precincts, would pick up their supplies and go to their setups, set up their poll for Election Day on the 30th. And then December 6th, if we make the change later in this agenda, is the certification meeting. This does have in our plan 1 advanced voting location at the main office and 1 drop box in the main office lobby, and it consists of 2 Election Day polls with a total of 6,355 voters. And this is an information-only kind of schedule, just to let you know what we're working on, and then, you know, doesn't require a vote from the board, as far as I'm concerned. Anything you'd like to comment on that?
No, I think the comments that we have will come up in the next bulleted item, but I do have one query. Without going into any great amount of detail, the concerns that were raised with regard to kind of the number of poll workers and what have you, are they, if they are implicated in these 2 precincts, if you and your staff will follow, I don't want you to answer that question, but if they are implicated at these 2 precincts, I would like for, you know, you to do some follow-up and what have you.
Well, as a matter of fact, we are taking some of our training class facilitators, and they are on deck to work the poll. We'll probably, you know, still have the regular manager and maybe the assistant managers, but any vacancies that we have at these 2 polls, we have our regular training class facilitators that are stepping in.
Right. And I don't want you to take it the wrong way by me saying I don't want you to answer the question. Of course, you may speak freely, of course. I just don't want to call the managers out from these 2 polling facilities if they were among the issues that, you know, we had last week. But I do want us to be as proactive as possible to try to get folks trained up in the event they were, you know, these 2 precincts implicated some of the new managers.
Yeah, with only 2 precincts, it's very much a different story than 145.
Right, but it's a matter of, oh, this is my first time being a polling manager, regardless of whether it's 2 precincts or 140 precincts. It's still, if it's their, it's their second time being a polling place manager. We want to be certain that they are comfortable and equipped based upon what Steve and others were sharing.
My only comment was that they would have plenty of help because we're going to have experts there with them.
Okay.
So they'll get sort of one-on-one training if they are, you know, one of the ones that needed some extra help.
Okay, sounds good.
And Janine, I have, I guess, a question. Is it mandatory that we have the main office available as an advanced voting location? Am I correct in saying that?
Okay. I think we're going to take up that now, unless there's anything further with regard to the time frames that are depicted on the schedule.
Can you put this up too? Thanks.
No? Okay. Thank you, Jenny.
Hello, Chairwoman and board members. We've come to the point where we're going to talk about and discuss the advanced voting period for the runoff. And so in front of you, I think included with the agenda, or at least emailed out, are the proposed dates and times for advanced voting for the runoff. And so I will note that there is an additional week that we had not had before. Like Ms. Brooks and I had spoken about trying to provide some extra days back in July when we had the House District 34 runoff. That wasn't possible at the time, but we do think we're able to add that extra weekend. This time it's a limited number of polls and equipment that needs to be tested and ready. But we do think that we'll be ready to open up on the 15th. We also have a required Saturday in there. So the code states as soon as possible, and this will be as soon as possible for us, especially given the holiday. We have a bit of an oddity in that second week because it's the Thanksgiving holiday, a couple of days there where we'll be unavailable. And we have requested that the day before we have a shortened period so that we can accommodate our workers that need to travel for family or be home to prepare the Thanksgiving meal or whatnot. So that was kind of a concession to the concerns that our staff had. And as Ms. Brooks mentioned, we are required to have the main office open, so that's why this area is the only one that you see. It was the location that was designated for Marietta in the general election. And then to give you just a few numbers to consider while we have the discussion, there were, from Ward 5, Marietta, there were 247 votes cast advance in person and 59 by mail. And currently, I think Janine mentioned earlier, we have 6 applications by mail now for that ward, which I do anticipate that number to go up. I'm not sure by how much. And so also, I wanted to mention the distances from the 2 polls to the main office from Turner Chapel. It's 2.7 miles, and Zion Baptist here just down the street, it's 1.8 miles. So 2.7 miles from one and 1.8 from the other. And I apologize, I don't have which precinct those 2 locations are for. So anyway, with that, I would invite discussion and see what the board thinks about the presentation so far.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Gunn. Are there any comments, questions, or concerns that anyone would like to raise with regard to the locations or just the overall plan? Locations, times, what have you? Sure, go right ahead.
Thanks for giving this to us in advance. And I just think we need to have some sort of coverage either later or like whether I'm fine to sort of, it doesn't necessarily need to be 7 to 7, but as a working population, I just think we need to accommodate people who might be coming from work to get to an advance. We only have 1 location, so I feel like we need to have some sort of like, maybe till 6, maybe till, I don't know. I don't know what options there are for that, but I do think we need to have a little bit more hour coverage on that later end.
Okay.
I think the feedback that I got from the advance in-person locations was that the earlier time was quieter. It was more that they saw people come in that like 6:30 range. Opposite? Okay.
I was just about to see
so tell me what you
if
saw.
I
That's just
could,
the feedback they gave me.
The staff and I had spoken about this earlier in the day, and it did seem that there was a downturn in the afternoons where I won't say many more people, it was a lower turnout, but more people came to the advanced voting hours that were earlier than they did for the extended period of time. So, I agree with you. I don't think 7 to 7 would be, the way to go. If we were to add some coverage, I would recommend the morning.
Morning, okay.
And, that's not to say that I have no data for this particular ward, so it could be that the 3 or 4 people came in the afternoon from that ward, but that would be speculation.
Yeah, I just feel like from a precedent perspective and just from a, just accommodation perspective, like I feel like, and I know you guys have the data, but looking at it from 9 to 5, it's just, that's a very traditional block that if people are at work or, if we can offer something on one end or the other, that would be my preference to see that.
Okay.
That was my concern as well, that we try to offer some expanded hours because we only have that Saturday.
Anything further? Well, I know I sent an email, obviously. Well, one, I also thank you for providing the information in advance, and I sent an email inquiring about whether there was something that needed to be physically closer. in that area, but I do appreciate the distance information, and so I'm happy to defer to the main office location, especially in light of the fact that obviously the main office location was the advanced polling location for Marietta during the general election. But I do concur with my colleagues that in as much that we need to have, or I would like for us to have, something that accommodates voters. I don't know whether it's a matter of getting that information, the data, specific to this, whether, specific to this ward, whether there were folks on the front end, these two locations, polling locations, whether there were folks more so on the front end or on the back end. I don't even know that we need to kind of press pause, because obviously you all need to begin to prepare and sensitize your staff to the timing of when they'll be working, but. Sure, go ahead.
I just want to just state publicly that, this election, the runoff and the election is paid for by the cities.
Mm-hmm.
And for the extended hours we did for the general election, we did make a negotiation of those hours with the city, and they agreed to pay the extra cost. So, obviously you are the superintendent, they've hired you to do this, but they did not really get a say into, what the cost would be for extending the hours.
With regard to the general roll election?
For the runoff. We did not have any discussion about the runoff.
Okay.
But they are still paying for that piece?
Yes.
Okay.
I will add too, and I don't know that's, typically they would have planned for at most a week. And now we have, the stipulation that's going to be as soon as possible. So, and it's not a full 2 weeks. It's
Right.
Just a few more days. But I just wanted to add that to the conversation. But, I haven't had any conversations with the city of Marietta.
Do we have a sense of kind of the additional cost, estimated additional cost? I don't propose to put myself in the shoes of the city of Marietta to suggest what they would be okay with versus what they will not be okay with.
We didn't really have time to estimate those costs. We just started talking about this today, looking at the emails that the board was looking at extra hours. But a couple extra hours with, probably 10 workers for 8 days. So,
okay.
Do we need to give you what we think, right? Like, do you want to know what we think, and then we can just vote on that? Does that make it easier for you all? How would you like to handle it?
I would think so, Janine. I would like for the board to approve what you all think we should do, and then we can approve it with the city.
We do need to know.
Right.
Of course, yeah. We fully intend to do that. I'm just trying to get a sense of making an informed decision to the extent that information is available. So
I personally like 8 to 6. That's what I like. I think that picks up an hour here and an hour there, and it kind of covers people commuting.
Okay.
I'm just throwing that out there.
Sure, no. Anyone else have any suggestions with respect to alternative hours or the 8 to 6 as suggested by Ms. Mossbacher?
I couldn't understand the proposal. What hours were you proposing?
Well, I think they just need us, the staff needs us to come to a decision, sort of what we'd like. And so I was saying, for me, I like the idea of 8 to 6, but because that just gives that a little bit expanded time on either end for people commuting.
So so you would be proposing November the 15th through the 20th, 8 a.m. to 6 p.m. and Monday and Tuesday, November 22nd and 23rd, 8 a.m. to 6 p.m. And then we would note that November the 24th, being the day prior to Thanksgiving, would remain the same or as proposed.
I don't know, what does everybody think? I mean,
I'm asking you what you're proposing. Yes.
I am proposing 8 to 6. I personally would leave the Wednesday. I think that people want to get home to be with their families.
Okay. I guess maybe I should have asked the question specifically on Saturday. Are you proposing 8 to 6 p.m. as well? Because definitely understand Monday through Friday, because we're talking about working individuals. And not to suggest that people aren't going to be working on Saturday, but that's a slightly different day. And so I think we have to be very specific in what we provide to Mr. Gunn and his team. So Monday through Friday, November the 15th through the 19th from 8 to 6 p.m., Saturday from 9 a.m. to 5 p.m., November 22nd and 23rd from 8 to 6 p.m., and then November the 24th from 9 a.m. to 1 p.m., or no?
Now, who's picking up the cost?
Well, the cost in general, it sounds like, is paid by the city of Marietta. Like that's, I assume
Oh,
that
the
they
city's going to go ahead and pay it?
the city is contracted to us to provide the runoff, right?
Yes, that's correct.
The city pays for it.
The city will pay for it. Okay.
Okay. What we will note, though, Pat, is as Ms. Evler made mention of, the additional cost associated with the runoff for the additional hours has not been negotiated with the city. Correct, Ms. Evler? Okay.
Well, the city hasn't even negotiated the runoff.
The runoff is in
The
our,
runoff's
in the
required.
original
is in our
contract.
contract, that if it goes to a runoff, that's part of the contract as well. As Bo mentioned, up until this year, we really have done voting at the main office for like an 8 to 5 type timeframe. And then we would do at the satellites for, at the other cities. Obviously, with Marietta, the main office has been the only satellite, it's been the only location. But they've, they're used to doing an 8 to 5 for a municipal election and runoffs. So when we extended the hours for the November election, we kind of had a conversation with all the cities about offering more hours, because we really understood that this board was going in that direction, so we had a conversation ahead of time. We really didn't talk about the runoff. Runoffs are usually lighter in turnout than the original election. I just bring that up because whatever our decision is, it will be paid for by the city.
I'm always concerned about consistency in communicating with our voters. And I certainly, the Monday through Friday extension that Ms. Musburger suggested is good for me. I still think that we create confusion when we change on Saturday. I mean, just our hours should be our hours, and I think I've said this for the past few years, that when we change, our voters barely keep up with what's going on from year to year, from election cycle to election cycle. So if possible, my preference would be to have consistency and just have 8 until 6, period.
You're saying to start it now?
Well, I'm just saying, looking at this schedule, November the 20th, Monday through Saturday, that our voters, in my experience, have not carefully looked at small changes, so that the proposal was to extend from 8 until 6, Monday through Friday, and then 9 until 5 on Saturday. I mean, that's a good window, but I'm just not sure that, again, people pay much attention.
I agree with you.
I just,
I mean, if we'd done
the
this
communication is.
for the coming, just like we just approved next year's schedule, well, that's when you should be doing it for next year. But I think this month, I mean, it's just, I hate to see 2 people show up. I mean, God bless them, they needed to vote. I agree. But how much money is expended, I don't, that's.
And we are talking about churches as well, so we don't have any idea about what their activity schedules may be.
Yeah, I don't know that Ms. Mossbacher suggested the 9 to 5 on Saturday. I was trying to clarify.
Okay.
So what the proposal
I just was saying, that's what I like, but I'm open to discussing.
Yes.
I also agree with consistency. I'm just personally, I think that we need to look at what they're doing on either end. And I can say, I believe both Fulton approved 9 to 6, and DeKalb approved 8 to 6.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, just if we're looking at our other metro counties around us.
Mm-hmm. And that's for every day.
They're consistent.
That's
in-
for every day.
They're consistent in Fulton, and in DeKalb, they did 9 to 6 on weekdays, 8 to 6, Saturday 9 to 6. I mean, if you want to, yeah.
So there is a slight
They did you-
variation.
they
There
did-
is variation.
Hence the reason why I made
Yes,
the
there is
inquiry. So
variation, yeah.
Right.
what exactly is the proposal that you would like for us?
Well, does anybody else have an opinion? I'm fine to say it's 8 to 6. If I'm going to make a proposal, I'm just going to say 8 to 6 straight through, except for the Wednesday.
Okay, that sounds like a proposal. What, does anyone have any comments or concerns with that particular proposal? 8 to 6, all days, with the exception of Monday, the 24th, from 9 a.m. to 1 p.m., given the holiday?
Wednesday.
Yes.
May I say one more
That's why I said
thing?
November the 24th.
As you're considering that,
Yes.
if the change is going to be 8 to 6 all the way through, then I would keep the 1 p.m. on Wednesday, but I would change it to an 8 a.m. opening.
Okay.
So that the opening is consistent across the board.
Thank you.
But we still need
Makes
the 1
sense.
p.m. cutoff, or I would
Thank you.
request that.
Okay, Greg?
I just didn't know whether her proposal was in motion.
I don't know that it is a motion. I'm just trying to get us all on the same page as to what we're talking about.
So that we can make a
So I made a
proposal, so we can make a motion.
Right, so that a motion
We'll have
can
a
be
motion.
made.
I was just coming to.
How are we going to get this information out, Bo?
This will be posted on the website. It'll go out and blast emails.
The same manner in which we've previously communicated it correctly. Yeah, I mean, it is what it is with regard to the condensed amount of time frame, but that's not within our purview, given the law, as far as the timing of when the elections will take place. So we're sending it out via the normal distribution
Correct.
channels? Okay.
As quickly as we can.
All right. So to be certain, the times that are noted are Monday through Saturday, the 15th through the 20th, November 22nd and 23rd. What the proposal is 8 a.m. to 6 p.m., and on November the 24th, 8 a.m. to 1 p.m. Is there a motion with respect to that particular proposal?
So moved.
Thank you, Steve. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Thank you, Jessica. It's been moved and properly seconded that we approve the proposed voting plan as far as the times and locations and dates for the advance polling for the runoff election. So if you'll just register your votes, please.
Well, I'll go along with this if you guys will go along with a paper ballot.
I don't know that we can do that.
Okay, well, hey, I'm game.
Okay.
Chairwoman and Board, I appreciate it.
Of course, and we appreciate you, Mr. Gunn, and your team. Okay. Moving on to the next item on the agenda. This pretty well was covered during Ms. Eveler's report with respect to November, the delays related to the openings of certain precincts during the November 2nd election. And we talked at a very high level about developing a kind of a plan to prevent future occurrences. Didn't know whether there was anything further to add, whether it's comments from the board, or for that matter, Ms. Eveler, if you'd like to provide any additional input beyond what you've already provided.
I just wanted to say that this happens nearly every election.
Mm-hmm.
So it's not something that's out of the ordinary.
Sure. And it was clear that it was not out of the ordinary because Ms. Eveler and her team provided notice to us as promptly as possible, secured the order to extend the time frame. So,
And just one thing I would like to mention, one of our mitigation activities that we do is we'll place an area supervisor at the opening, a poll during opening, and they pick which one is the most vulnerable in their eyes as far as this kind of an issue. And then we have about 21 or 22 technicians, which are our employees. They're not vendor employees. And then we also ask the area supervisor, what would be your next vulnerable location? And we place those technicians at opening. We did have one technician at one of the polls that had one of the issues. And, you know, he was a help, but they still didn't quite make it. But that's one of the things we do to mitigate that. Sometimes you guess wrong. In this case, out of the 7, we had 1.
Okay. Go ahead, Steve.
I think that given the Senate Bill 202 requirements, that we probably should, or at least I would feel more comfortable if we did a report or a mitigation plan so that what you're going to do is documented. So if we're later having to defend ourselves as to whether we took these issues seriously, you know, that we've got that report somewhere on record that we can point to, and that we took it seriously, we did this action, and either solved or didn't solve the problem, but at least we took it seriously. And I would propose or request the director prepare a report. It doesn't have to be complicated, but just something that is on the record that says, we realize these problems occurred and here's what we did to mitigate them. And if they occur every election, like Greg said, okay, but at least we're showing that we're pursuing those and are taking them seriously.
And that the cities are aware of it.
Okay.
And this is the first time during my time on the board that I have understood, although I think I did hear something of it as I was visiting polling sites, but this is the first time that I've been aware of how we prioritize, for example, possible vulnerabilities. And so, yes, I think it's worth documenting that.
Anything further? Okay, hearing none, we'll move on to the next item on the agenda, board member comments. You're up, Pat.
Okay, well, since we got the time change, why don't we go ahead and do the paper ballots too? You know, what the heck? Is this legal or not, or what can we do?
It is not legal. First of all, 21-2-300 mandates that the system we use, the electronic ballot markers, be used for federal, state, and county elections. It doesn't say municipal, but in that same section, it says that the counties shall be authorized to contract with municipal governments for the use of such voting equipment, and we have done that. So we have a contract for the use of that equipment. So we can't arbitrarily change that.
That paper ballot,
But more importantly, 21-2501C says that the runoff election is a continuation of the election. And courts have ruled that you cannot change the method of voting between the two.
So my proposal for a paper ballot is not legal. All right, well, I still would push it, but let's count the paper.
Okay.
I'd just like to follow up on Pat's comments is that, you know, I was on the Board of Elections in the early 90s, and the first election that I dealt with, we had punch cards, and we had hanging chads. This is even before the hubbub of 2000, so I'm ashamed to say that I know what hanging chads are. But out of that, we actually converted to an all-paper ballot scanned system, and it worked great. And I have never understood why the state chose the system that they did the first time around, the old electronic system, and then I don't know why the state chose the new system, because it really was much cheaper to go to the plain paper ballot scanner system. So I can only say to folks that make comments that I totally agree with your comments in terms of simplicity and lower cost. Of course, at this point, we've already bought all the BMDs. So there's no savings from an equipment standpoint, but, you know, the past keeps coming back to us, but that was a better system, at least in my mind, that we had in 1994 versus what we have today. But, as Greg says, the law's the law. We have to follow the law and use the systems that the legislature chose, and we're kind of stuck with them right now.
So a proposal for paper ballots?
Sorry,
So if I make a proposal for paper ballots, what happens?
it wouldn't pass.
Well, I still make it.
It's not legal.
Right.
I make a proposal for paper.
Well, before you do that, I'm sorry, will you provide the citations, the code citations
He
that you
already
made?
did.
I'm asking him to repeat them.
It's OCGA 21-2 501C.
501C. That's the one I wanted. That's with respect to the continuation.
Yes.
Yeah,
Yes.
thank you. Okay. Go ahead. I believe you wanted to make a motion.
Oh, I already did. I made a proposal to, we go to paper ballot.
So is that a?
Proposal.
Is a proposal and then a motion? Is that a motion?
A motion, excuse me.
Okay. Is there a second?
I'll just say that in spirit, I agree with the motion.
Point of order, I must. The Roberts Rules of Order person in front of me, we have a proper motion on the floor. Is there a second? The motion fails for want of a second. Yes, please go ahead, Steve.
No, I was just going to say, I agree with the motion. I would vote for the motion if it was legal.
Okay.
But if the attorney for the board says it's illegal, we can't go in that direction.
All right.
Great. Okay. Thank you so much for your able counsel, Mr. Litchfield. I think at this point, are we moving into executive session?
We need to change the meeting day first. Next
Oh, I'm sorry. Hence the reason why I flipped the. Hold on. I'm sorry. Was there further board comment?
I just wanted to congratulate the elections team on the pilot program and the successful, I think that went really well at the libraries. I did visit them, and I got some good feedback, and I think everybody was really excited about it. Seemed like it went really well. And I did have a question about the absentee ballot envelopes, and if you had any problems with them or what. Could you talk about that a little bit? I thought that might be good to talk about for a minute.
So I've already reported our impressions back to the Secretary of State's office in hopes that they make some changes to the envelope. The new envelope has a flap on it to provide some privacy to the information. We have to get at it before we can accept it and open up the ballot, but we don't want everybody to see it. So it has this privacy flap, which is creating lots of problems with getting the flap open but not detached from the envelope because they have to stay together, and not tearing it up because it has to be readable. So that's one of the issues. And then once we got around to actually opening the accepted ballots, part of the sticky tape that closes the envelope down or the flap down actually stuck to part of the inner envelope. And so we couldn't, open and release the inner envelope that holds the ballot without some really, quite strenuous work of pulling it out and some letter opener work. So we have already reported that. Several other counties also, to my understanding, have also reported it. So, this was the first time we used them, and hopefully they didn't buy too many of them and they can make changes.
Is there anything that we as a board should do to advocate about that? Like, is there something, if you said, here's the problems and sent us a list and we said, whether it was to the state election board or to the Secretary of State, should we be advocating about that? I did hear problems both from voters and people who were working with the envelopes that there was, it was cumbersome for
Yeah,
them.
oh.
So I would like to know if there's a way we can sort of advocate or support that
Right.
change too.
So those are the two items that I did report already, and I don't know that, you know, having another report by the board would make any more difference, but certainly we can. One thing, though, that was a positive, we didn't notice a great failure rate of voters not putting their ID information on the envelope, which, you know, that was a brand-new thing, to put your driver's license number and your birth date. Some voters did forget their birth date. That was probably the most common error that they made. But I think the error rate was around 2.5%, which wasn't as bad as the signature, you know, failure rate from before.
So you said we did not notice a significant failure rate.
Right.
With those 2 points of
Right.
identity.
Right. I did hear from a couple of other counties, and one did report a 5% error rate, and they're a smaller county, so they had a smaller sample. But ours was around 2 or 2.5%. So that was actually not a bad rate. We didn't have to issue very many cures for voters failing to put the right information on.
Since you raised the signature, what was the failure rate, if you have it available, around the failure to provide a signature?
I don't
much
have
higher?
that
Okay.
statistic, but an anecdotal comparison was that, you know, it wasn't as much of a failure rate, and the office workers, I think, expected more, because the voters had to put more pieces of information down. They had to put their birth date, their driver's license number, or social security number, and sign it. And so they had 3 points of failure, as opposed to the signature.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, excellent. Anything further from board members and board member comment?
I think I'm good.
Okay, all good. This is the forum to do it. Next up, the next scheduled board meeting. Obviously, in light of the runoff, we need to change the scheduled board meeting from December the 13th to December the 6th. Is there a motion to do so? Thank you, Ms. Machsbacher. A second? Thank you, Mr. Bruning. It's been moved and properly seconded. All of those in favor, if you'll register your vote. Thank you. It is unanimous. Now, if we do need executive session, and we'll move into executive session at this time. Yep. Is there a motion to move into executive session?
For the purpose of litigation.
For the purpose of litigation. Thank you, Ms. Brooks. Second? Mr. Bruning, thank you. Okay. It's been moved and properly seconded. We'll go ahead and register your votes to move into executive session, please. I'm sorry. Are we? Yep, it absolutely passed. Yes, please.
So everybody will need to leave.
Please. Please. I think we've exceeded our 5 p.m. time frame.